A cordial good afternoon to all of you as you come to reverence in the house of God. I reverence God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. I greet Pastor Lewis Clark with agape love, and then we welcome officials from both the parishes of Terrebonne and Lafourche to our community unity meeting. Our meeting will begin with a word from the Lord found in the book of Romans, chapter number 13, and I will read to you verse number 1. That verse reads, "Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God." The word of God shared from Romans chapter 13, verse number 1. At this moment, we're going to ask that Pastor Clark will lead us in prayer. Pastor Clark.
Head bows. Our Father and our God, it is again that we humble ourselves before Thee. We gather in this divine setting. We gather in this political setting. We gather in this citizen setting, but our heads are bowed, but our hearts are lifted. Our eyes are closed so that we can seek divine direction. Now bless our coming together, that it may serve as we go forward to help bring about a change for many of the things that is perplexing us today. Bless every presenter that they may share with us their ideas. Bless this pastor who have opened his doors for us, and bless the citizenry who has an interest and a concern, because your word has declared that together we will stand, but divided we will fall. So now use this in the power of your Spirit to guide and direct and govern whatever it is that we attempt to do, and at all time it is ours to give your name the praise. Through Jesus Christ our Lord we pray. Amen.
We shall now be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Stephen Ponville. Mr. Ponville will come. Flag. For which it stands. God bless you as you're seated. We will now have our unity song of praise led by Sister D. Satcher.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the ocean, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the ocean, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. From the mountains to the prairies, to the ocean, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Thank you.
this moment, I present to you our councilman, Brother Carl Lee Harding.
Irvin Brown, great pastor of the Eagle Wright Baptist Church here in Gray, Louisiana, giving honor to also a great pastor of the Mount Olive Baptist Church, Pastor Lewis Clark. It's two things when I wake up in the morning that I come to realize. My eyes pop open, I realize that there is a God. Number two, I'm not him. It's only by his grace that brought all of us saved thus far. And his grace will lead us on. I hold a position, and I hear the term politics sometime, and I just happen to be a concerned citizen that have a passion for the people. I look at the fact that I'm more Christian than what I am politician, because I was on drugs since I was baptized at the age of 4. My mother drugged me to church, and she still tried to drag me to every church that she goes to. But we look at trying to bridge the gap and bringing communities together. And before I really get off into it to try to create a particular mindset for people, I would like for Chief Coleman to stand up. Chief Coleman is the police chief in Terrebonne Parish in the city of Houma. Chief Coleman, when he was appointed to be chief of the Houma Police Department, the community had great praise for him, proud of him. And I happened to be in a setting because I have the sentiments of Chief Coleman. Because most oftentimes, a man can only look at himself unless he look at him in the mirror. And people that look at that man can only assume things. When he shows up as the young man that grew up on the east side of town, it's praised. But when he shows up as a man that has a job to do, he looked at differently in his own community. I say to you, keep doing what you're doing. You came up in the police department after I come through the fire department, and it wasn't easy because there were obstacles and hurdles that you have. But in order to bridge the gap of the community and law enforcement, the mindset does not look at him for who he is. Sheriff Tim, could you stand, please? I met Sheriff Tim on the east side of town, him and his wife, and I think a daughter. A little back street, and we both were seeking a position, which we now hold. It's no different between these men when they come to do a job. They shouldn't look any different by any part of this community. So the professionalism that is exemplified in this country by law enforcement and the court system throughout this land, I do believe that over 90% of the time, these gentlemen do not let, thank you. Law enforcement do not let their personalities prejudice their position. The position I hold, I should not prejudice my position with my personality. So I'm not going to let my personality prejudice my position, and no one in this room should do so. As the community look at law enforcement, and through history they looked at law enforcement negatively. Pastor Brown read the scripture in reference to the authorities and obeying the authorities. I was a lady said, well, the police keep picking on me. I said, well, what's the problem, ma'am? They keep telling me I have to move my car. I said, why are they telling you to move the car? They said that there's a sign where I park my car at that says no parking. It's the obvious. Some asked me, said, well, why do you go hang out on the corner with the fellas? Well, that's the heartbeat and the everyday people that I serve that may have to have the understanding that law enforcement do not mean them no harm. So you have the police come in by my house. I said, no, your lifestyle have the police come in by your house. Prior to obtaining the position, people came to me and said, well, you're going to go downtown and get those people straight down there. I said, no, that's wrong. I said, I'm going to get my community straight. What about the dead bodies? What about the mothers and the daughters and the sons and the grandchildren and those people that are affected by crime in our community, and in some aspects that when certain people seem as if that they are going to intimidate our communities and we give in to the intimidation? Why do I hang on the corner? Well, perhaps the police officers could be more visible. The guy told me I was at the barbershop and he was incarcerated. He was not able to attend here. And I said, man, you seem as if that you have it all together. So what would be the most important thing that you think that police officers and law enforcement can do to improve the community? They said, be more visible. I tried to be as visible as I possibly could. Some of my colleagues visible as possibly they could. So what we're going to do with, I am Baptist, so we won't have that holding spirit. We're going to ask that Sheriff Tim Sonnier, Sheriff Craig Weber, Chief Dana Coleman, and Chief Brian Zerang. We'll go with those. And what we're trying to do here is they're going to tell you what they do, and they're here to say what they need from the community. And we're going to have an opportunity after each particular segment to have a few questions to those individuals, specifically about what your concerns is. We want to bridge the gap in our community because I just can't stand to be intimidated in my own community when my mother has to walk the streets and other kids have to walk the street, and we won't open our mouths. We won't take back our communities. We would rather put down law enforcement and the system. Of course, we wonder about why does a bar of soap cost almost $4 when you get locked up? Or why does a phone call cost so much after you put your loved one in prison or in jail? There are some things that create more hardship while someone is locked up in jail on their families and themselves. And after I finish this last story, we're going to have these guys come up and say, if you think a person goes to jail that's rather innocent, there are some aspects in reference to mental health, lack of jobs, lack of education. There are a number of things when a person goes to jail, if he don't have no support from the outside, he comes out in debt. And that debt, because in the jail, they have people that actually help to protect people or give them, and when they get out of jail, they didn't have a jail. When they get out of jail, they didn't have a job when they went to jail. He just made a contact in the jail, but he got a different job when he get out there. We have to be mindful of what we're doing and how we're doing it, so we have to have a better way of doing things, because that actually creates hardship on some of the people that were there. So without further ado, these gentlemen will come up, and after that, we're going to go through the judicial system. Thank you.
Well, I usually make the joke when I take a podium, everybody thought I was taller. So we're going to get that out of the way now, so we can, the short jokes, right, we'll get it out of the way. But look, I can say for the last 2 years since I've been in office, we've obviously had a lot of challenges. But the majority of the crimes we've been able to solve has been a help from the community. The community often helps, and sometimes parts of the community, they're a little leery about helping, but the challenge that we have is to reach out. They have trust in us, so we can help solve a lot of crime. There's a lot of, I couldn't even begin to tell you how many where the community actually reaches out and gives us information and assists in the crime. So if you think sometimes not saying nothing, I'm just not going to say nothing. If you think, well, they'll figure it out anyway, 90% of our crimes that we solve is usually help from the community. So I want to let you know that when you're often passing information to us, it does help. We want, and I can probably say, and I can't speak for the sheriff, but I can tell you, he's probably going to say the same thing. We want a peaceful community. We love our communities, and Carly's right. We're here because God put us here. And all we're doing is serving what God wants us to do. And we'll continue to do that. Things that we've, to kind of get ahead of crime, we do rely on a lot of technology. We've invested in technology. One, to bring transparency to my office, which I hold. I have body cameras. My officers wear body cameras. Now, on that note, I've had to arrest 3 of my own officers. They're not above the law. But the body cameras do 2 things. If my officers are doing right, and it gives you the facts of what happened. And there's been plenty times where families come to my office and they say, well, they saying this happened, that happened. Well, you can sit down and here's the body camera footage, and this is what really happened. So we do offer transparency, and I have, and family members have come in, and I'm happy to show them. And I always said, you got one side of the story, the other side, but somewhere in the middle is the truth. And that's what we seek when it comes to when we investigate the crimes that we're dealing with every single day. So with that being said, technology has been very instrumental with the teams I've put together, in basically an intel unit. The intel units, we're monitoring social media. We're monitoring things where there's potential violent acts that we see coming, and we can enhance law enforcement presence in those areas and to prevent. And several, probably during football season, we got intel there was going to be a retaliation of shootings, and I can talk about it. So we enhanced presence in that area. We took 3 firearms from juveniles, and had no doubt we stopped a retaliation which was related to gang and violent activities. The thing is, the younger generation, I'd rather get them before they make a mistake that's going to change the life of another victim, because there's always going to be 2 victims when a young man makes a violent act or a young lady conducts a violent act. The act on the victim itself, where they take someone's life, that family loses that loved one. But the generations that's making these decisions, that younger generation, well, they forget the action they take, their families also are victims, because now they have to see them incarcerated and see these type of things. And I just spoke to a mother on the way here. I don't think there's any father or parent wish their child would lose their life or be locked up for a long time. I think that's any parent's nightmare. So we have to be compassionate on both sides, but more importantly, try to break through some of the younger generation and prevent them before they make these mistakes that's going to change their life, change their families, and the victims' lives and their parents. So we're doing everything we possibly can and continue to push forward especially doing a lot of preventive things and preventive actions. We've increased patrol. When I took office, we had 8. We're pushing about 12 per shift now, and we're looking to grow a little more. I got in my budget to hire 50 more officers this year to come. We do want more of a presence, but more of a presence of the community, that we're out there and reaching out to the community. I feel it's our job to reach out to you and just take our hand and work with us. And we're trying to clean up all of our communities and make that effort among all of us. We're all in this together. As the good chief down there said, one hand washes the other. And that's truth. So we rely on you to help us. And when it comes to agencies working together, I will say in this area, there is no better communication among state police, our adjacent parish. When it comes to solving crimes, we work with Lafourche all the time. We work with state, and more importantly, within our parish with Houma Police Department. 90% of our crime it's a combination that we're able to solve. We're all working together, and it's important that we work together. But at the same time, we're here reaching out to you to help us, because we need your help. And the only way we're going to do this to solve these issues is that we work together. Mr. Carley, I really appreciate you inviting me, and I'm going to let Craig Weber, he's probably a little more eloquent speaker than I am. He's been here longer. But it's all good. But you see a man's heart, and I stand here in front of you. We're asking for help, and we can't do it alone. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for participating. I certainly want to acknowledge and recognize Pastor Brown and Pastor Clark, as well as Councilman Harding, for inviting all of us here to engage in what I consider to be important dialogue. I've also asked several members of my staff to join us as well. Seated in the third row to your left is the commander of our criminal division, Major Josh Champagne. Seated next to him is Captain Carla Beck, who runs our reentry programs for our Lafourche Parish Correctional Center, and she's joined by someone she cares deeply about, Captain Mike Beck, her husband, who is the patrol division commander, and of course Lieutenant Rodney Morrison has one of the most critical positions in the dialogue that we're about to engage in. He's in charge of our juvenile division section. And I say it's a dialogue because I like to hear, and I want my staff to hear from you as well as you hear from us, because Tim's right. Sometimes in the conversation, there are things that come to us that we recognize that we maybe could do better or we need to address. And similarly, there are things that we can share with the community that can help all of us work together much better. Just a brief summary of what we're seeing in Lafourche Parish, and I have no doubt Terrebonne and surrounding parishes are seeing similar things in terms of law enforcement involvement. First and foremost is this economy, and this inflation has created a situation where people with addiction, and maybe people without addiction, are stealing a lot more. We've seen a recent uptick in thefts of property, thefts of precious metals, thefts of catalytic converters, and while that certainly doesn't necessarily result in a homicide or a serious violent crime, it is a community concern. If you're the victim, you want that crime addressed and addressed as best as we can. And you also want to address the underlying root causes that caused or contributed to someone making that decision. Just yesterday, we responded to an overdose death. That's another thing that we've seen a great uptick in. And for every overdose death that we respond to, we probably revive 10 people with Narcan who, but for the involvement of a first responder, a deputy, a fireman, an EMT, an emergency room, probably would have died as well. The social isolation created by 2.5 years of COVID-19, the impact of Hurricane Ida that many people are still trying to recover from and have been displaced, in my opinion, has exacerbated this problem of people turning to illegal narcotics and oftentimes taking things that they don't recognize will take their life. So that's another community problem that we've had. With respect to the violent crime, in the 30 years that I've been sheriff, I'm sad to see that what appears to have changed and what makes the investigation and sometimes the prevention of violent crime is what I call the old mafia mentality of people wanting to handle things within themselves rather than working with the authorities to try to solve problems. And you add to that the effects of social media and the ability for a person or a group of people in Thibodeau to post a video that is offensive or disrespectful to someone in Houma or Bayou Blue or one of our other communities, and that escalates to a point of violent homicide type crime. We finally, with the cooperation of Houma and Terrebonne, were able to make an arrest in one incident back around Christmas time where there were five retaliatory shooting incidents between two people. One group would go to Raceland and they'd shoot, do a drive-by. That Raceland group would come to Bayou Blue or Houma, and in one day there were 3 retaliatory shootings. Any one of us, myself included, can be the victim of a random act of violence. You can be going to the grocery store or find yourself pumping gas, whatever the case may be. You could be hit by a stray bullet or someone just really trying to take your property. That can happen, and that's hard to prevent because it's random. But the violence that we're addressing and working towards trying to address, the person who is being shot at knows who is shooting at them. They know who they have an incident with. And with respect to community involvement, I think first we have to all agree that that behavior is destructive, and we cannot condone that behavior. And we have to be willing to share information, if it's in a confidential manner, using the Crime Stoppers hotline, or a one-on-one manner, or in some way to give us the tools that we can use to be more effective and prevent not only the person who's involved in these retaliatory shootings, but also the innocent victims who might get hit by a stray bullet along the way. Our region is blessed because we all operate in the same law enforcement computer database to share information. That's pretty much unprecedented across the country. So Tim and his guys and Dana and the chief of police in Lockport and Thibodeau and Golden Meadow and the sheriff's office, we all have the same information that we can share. So we know what's going on back and forth. That's an application of technology. Now, technology has assisted us in many ways in being more effective. Digital evidence is what we refer to. Everything from phones to cameras to looking at traffic lights, all of these things that we call digital media have truly advanced our ability to be more effective in crime fighting. And that's an advantage that we have, but it also creates a learning curve where we have to continue to educate our officers from within. For example, we had our first crime where the victim was scammed using Bitcoin. This whole cryptocurrency is a whole new area for law enforcement to gain competency in because it's where crime is leading. Not all criminals are uneducated, some are highly educated. I'm glad that Representative or Councilman Harding brought out the fact that corrections is a big piece, and that's why Captain Carla Beck is here. And I will applaud Tim for a sheriff that was recently elected and is in his second year. He recognizes, he gets the fact that we have a unique role as people in law enforcement. Most people look at the sheriff and they think of deputies, police officers, investigating crimes, detectives. They forget that the sheriff operates the jail. And the jail is occupied generally by people from our community who have been charged with a crime and convicted of a crime. And we know that we're dealing with a population of people that maybe disregarded the law for one reason or another. And they're under our care, custody, control, and supervision. So we have a unique opportunity to intervene in a meaningful way to try to change that. And Tim is unique. There are many sheriffs who don't recognize the value of the incarceration piece of his job. He is embracing reentry. He is embracing restorative justice. He is embracing justice reinvestment and recognizing and partnering with us in many different initiatives to try to improve the outcome. Because if we can change a person's disposition, their attitude, their deficiencies, whether their needs or risk, and bring them back in the community in a more productive way, then we have improved our community in a very, very dramatic manner. So that's a critical piece. And I'm going to I hate to always preach in a church because I'm not a preacher, but I was in church before Easter, and the sermon, the gospel sermon, had to do with a well-known passage from the gospel wherein Jesus is in the temple teaching, and the Pharisees and the high priests bring in a woman who has been caught in adultery, and as they walk in, Jesus kneels down and he's writing into the dirt. And they, of course, confront him, and they said, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. Under the law of Moses, she is to be stoned to death. And what do you say?" And he gets up from writing and makes the statement that you often hear, "Let he who is without sin cast the first stone." Then he kneels down and starts writing again. And the priest went deeper into that. He went deeper into that story. And of course, Jesus ultimately says, "No one has condemned you, neither do I. Go forward and sin no more." But he said the consensus, while there's no written record of what Jesus was writing at that time, the consensus among many biblical scholars and theologians is that Jesus was actually writing the sins of the accusers in the sand. So I say to you, all of you, and to our community, and to Tim, we believe in second chances. We believe that we have that opportunity when people are incarcerated to improve the outcome. And if there's one thing that means a lot to me, and I can tell Tim as well, is that we're working very, very hard behind the scenes. You don't necessarily see that, but we're working behind the scenes on the back end of the process as well as the front end of the process. So we're here to listen and to answer and to be part of the solution of improving the community that we live in. We're blessed because as a community, statistically, we're a lot safer. We're a lot better off than many other regions of the state and the country. But just being better off doesn't mean we can't be better. And I guess the last thing I'll close with, and Tim made that as well, is we have to be willing to look at the entire picture. We can react to a situation. We can have a instantaneous, maybe guttural reaction to a video or an allegation, whether it's against a person or a police officer. But at some point, we have to sit back and say, okay, this looks really bad. It looks like somebody should be held accountable. But we also have to say, where is that accountability piece? And get the entire picture before we immediately demand some action that may not be the right action. So with that, I don't want to take too much time. I know there are a lot of speakers here, but I do appreciate this opportunity, and I look forward to the productive dialogue that will come from this.
I'm one that don't usually take a podium. I like to be out walking around talking and engaging with people, but I may start off here and I may end up down the aisle. But first of all, I want to thank Councilman Harding for having us here today. I think this dialogue is very important. I'm not going to stand here and just repeat the same things that were being said by our honorable sheriffs here. But one thing I do respect is the analogy that you gave earlier when you asked me to stand, and that hit home. So I want to elaborate on that a little bit, because it is very important that we as a community, regardless of what we look like, come together, because there's a lot of violence that's going on within our communities. One thing that I can say is when I was appointed police chief, just like Councilman Harding said, I can go into the area where I grew up, which is Mechanicville, and a door can be closed in my face. But I can show up outside of that uniform and be welcome. But on the flip side, I can go into a restaurant, not in the uniform, and also be ridiculed. But when I'm in a restaurant with my uniform on, I can be welcome. And one would ask, well, what is he talking about? Well, we all know about the incident that occurred with George Floyd. When that occurred, I took a position on HTV and shared some sentiments about that occurrence. When all of that division was going on, I find myself with my family in a restaurant, sitting down, trying to partake in dinner, and already had the little buzzer. Family comes in after me, and when my buzzer went off, a young lady and her family sitting there, she was like, she told a little waitress, she said, the only reason that you're giving them preferential treatment is because of what's going on. She used a few choice words concerning of my skin color. My kids wanted to get involved with her, and I had to show some restraint. But I took my seat involved in dinner. But one thing that got to me was when this was being said, I saw a reaction of a young lady that was sitting next to this family, and she was like, "Oh my God, oh my God." Well, that young lady came up to me at my dinner table and she said, "Chief Coleman, I am so sorry that you had to endure this type of behavior, and this lady don't even know who you are." I said, "Don't worry about that. She just, showed her true colors." Well, she went back to this young lady and told her who I was. She then came back and tried to apologize, but I wasn't having any part of it. I was professional. I didn't want to have anything to say to her. But I crossed that bridge. And I always talk about a crossroad. And just like Councilman Harding said, I go into my neighborhood, Mechanicville, where my mom still lives. I cut her grass every week. I do chores around the house. Sometimes you may catch me jogging in the neighborhood. People may pass by and say, "What's up, Dana?" But when something happens in that neighborhood and I show up in my black SUV with my brass on, with my uniform looking spit shine, then there's another undertone. It's heartbreaking that as the police chief, I've been the police chief for 7 years. I've been on the department for 29 years. I used to be the chief of detectives, worked several serious cases, was a part of the serial killer and everything. But the thing that's heartbreaking to me is 85 to 90% of the violent cases that I've had my hands in and that I've had my department hands in, the victims and the suspects look like me. Many days I leave scenes, I go to my house, I share my sorrows with my family, and I ask them, what can I do? Because it appears to me that I'm not doing enough. Some people come to me and complain about activity in their neighborhood. I get with my personnel, we do operations plans, we go into those neighborhoods, and my motto is to be proactive but professional. We go into those neighborhoods and we proactive. When we're in those neighborhoods proactive, some people come back and say, "Well, y'all dealt with the wrong kid. Lil Johnny is an honor roll student. He's on heart medicine or anything like this, but y'all jacking up the wrong person." Well, at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, why Lil Johnny not in the house? That's in my neighborhood where I grew up. Now I'm gonna flip it to another neighborhood of some individuals that don't look like me. We got speeders in the neighborhood. They running a stop sign all day, every day. Y'all not doing enough patrol. We turn up the heat. Guess who we stop? The same person that came in and made the complaint about speeders. In law enforcement, we be transparent. You make the complaints, we're gonna handle them, but we need help from the community as well. There is a phrase that I use, one hand wash the other, but I'm gonna elaborate a little bigger. This hand is your law enforcement. This hand is those working with law enforcement. The face is characterized as the community. So in order for us to take care of our community, we bring our hands together. One hand wash the other, and it takes two to wash the face so we can take care of our community. We can't do this by ourselves, you all. We cannot. It takes one hand reaching across the table and meeting you in the middle. It also takes us meeting at that crossroad, not to get into an accident, not an accident of differences where we're arguing and we're fussing, but let's come up with a solution. I've attended several of these town halls I've attended several meetings, but when we have homicides with young black men that's laid out on the street and young black men going to prison, I see no one meeting with the family of that victim. No one outside of the uniform that I wear meeting with the family of that victim. No one outside of the uniform that I wear meeting with those that are going to prison. Because a lot of those retaliatory cases that the sheriffs talked about is because no one is trying to meet in the middle to bring these families together to try to rectify what caused this friction. So one thing that I'm going to challenge each and every one of you in here today is to extend your hand across the table to work with your law enforcement, not against them. And let's change what we're facing on a daily basis. I thank you once again, Councilman Harding, for having me. I have an open door policy at the police department. You can come in at any time. But I can just tell you, since I became police chief, everybody that called over there say they my family. And my secretary tries her best to sift through all of that. But if you need a number to get in touch with me directly, it's 985-873-6383. My secretary's name is Donna Wedgeworth. And once you go through her, you can come directly to me. And by all means, don't tell her you're my family, because she's going to ask me. So thank y'all for having me here. And like I say again, let's reach our hands across the table. Let's meet at the crossroad. And instead of us getting into an accident, let's try to see what we can do to rectify these issues that we're facing on the street every day with our young individuals. Thank you.
Throughout the state, Sheriff Weber has one of the best reentry programs going. We spoke with Sheriff Tim, man of God, doing a great job. Sometimes we talk 7 o'clock in the morning. Chief Coleman, we try to work on efforts how to deter crime. I talked to some people, say, well, we don't have no planes, we don't have no boats. How we do this and how we do that. I think also we have to look at the prevention part of it. The state police, I was in a meeting on Thursday, and the state police, were not able to be here, but they are important too. And the smuggling that's going on back and forth. But from the east side of town all the way to Thibodeau, they've been wreaking havoc amongst themselves for no reason. And we want to go to the next point right here with the justice system. And hopefully, Mr. Fitch is not here, but Mr. Cook is here. We have a representative from the district attorney's office, Joe Waits. I think Gary, did he show? Yeah, is Gary here? He said he was on his way. Okay. But we want to deal with the arrest, the bail, bond reductions, and the court-appointed lawyers. And in your presentation, hopefully we can cover that, because I had a guy was arrested. And like Chief Coleman said, I'm only a councilman. They called me for bond reduction. They want to talk to the lawyer, and they want to talk to the judge, and they basically wanted the charges dropped. You know what I mean? But then realistically, when you get your neighborhood and you go on the corner and say snitches get stitches, I tell you what, you do something wrong around me, I'm not going to jail for nobody else. I'm going to tell who did it. Because there's a little lady that's on my block. She said, you need to call the police, you need to call the police. But I said, well, if I call the police and then you bring them to your house, they don't want it to your house. They don't want the police coming in. That's a problem that they're having. So the police, you have to get a better system of how to actually go out and investigate sometime, because this person be perfectly willing to call the police, but you go directly to that person's house. And those people that guns is walking up and down the street, they know who called the police on them. So that's part of the thing that we have to deal with. If you don't mind, we'll entertain 3 questions before we get to Mr. Cook. 3 questions to either one of these 3 men that just spoke. Questions. Mr. Rainey.
When we go back to saying, like Chief Coleman said, that the youths in the area, why are we cutting so many programs off for the youths?
Why are we cutting so many programs for the youth?
Yes, we dealing with an issue right now with summer camp. In the needy areas that this parish government and this parish recreation directive, just say Gibson. I'm going to use Gibson. If Gibson kids want to go to Bayou Black swimming pool for to go on a field trip, that parish recreation director say he will not reimburse that district for that summer camp for them going off of the premises to go to that. Suppose they want to go to the Capitol. Suppose they want to go and learn things. Suppose they want to go to the Superdome. But why are we cutting off so many programs? When Michel Claudet was the parish president, this summer that's coming up when these kids get out of school, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, all the recreation centers was open. Time on the weekend. So we cut so many programs off for the youth. We got to give them something to do instead of locking them up.
So, entertaining the questions in reference to recreational time and how law enforcement can actually enhance or better the situation with certain programs.
Well, the concept of recreation is above, I'm good, is above the law enforcement perspective. That's actually a parish government topic that, I mean, I looked on here to see if any representatives from our parish government was here, but I don't have the answer for you for
No, what I'm saying, I'm just saying, like you're saying, for the needy kids. And that's some of the problems we're going to have. Because summer's going to come. And they're not going to have nothing to do. Right. So they're going to be busting your windows, breaking in your houses, doing stuff they ain't got no business. You know, we got to give them something to keep them active. You know, we got to give them an avenue, you know, to do things so they can look forward to not going to prison. You know, once they go to juvenile detention center, y'all going to have 1,300 programs for them. But we don't want them to get there. We want to stop them getting there. Right. You see? And another day you go to speed. I live right here on 316. During the bus time for the schools, they going around the buses. Going around the buses. I called the state trooper office. I said, hey, trooper. I said, man, I got a problem with the bus, with the speeders going around the buses. Around the buses. I said, can you come here by Eagle Wright Church and set them in the parking lot? I said, I'll get Mr. Cool to open the gate for you. You can sit there. He tell me, he said, Mr. Rainey, he said, I don't have state troopers to go sit around and do that. Okay? Now I'm going through the tunnel. I stop on Tunnel and Valley. Come from behind the brick, 10 state troopers. Getting out of 15 $50 seatbelt.
Yeah. And like it's a community effort that we have here. In every aspect, even with my position, we have other council people here and other elected officials, is the fact that it's a combination of things. Originally, we first had an opportunity, and this is stemming off the other town hall we had, because I spoke with people in reference to crime and how these gentlemen here are going to help out with crime. But then that's an issue that we have to, as a whole. The first place I went to was the church. And then now we with law enforcement after we come to government. Yes, sir.
I'm a member of the church. My name is Daryl Woods. I have an adopted son. He's 5 years old. And I'm the one who brought it up to Andy. What is he going to do this summer? You know, a lot of things that start young. That's why a lot of crimes be happening. If you give them something to do, they'll get out of that, you know.
Yeah, so in reference to recreation, we have summer camps. I think we have a juvenile section over here. We have a very, very important part of our segment here, Mr. Joe Harris will be speaking with us. Yes, sir. You have one more question? None? Yes, ma'am.
Here because like the juveniles, parents are afraid to do anything to their children. I was beaten as a child. I didn't end up in jail or prison or anything. I'm not dead. So I say, hold the parents accountable. If the kids do something, the parents should know what it is at any hour of the day or night. Hold the parents, make them pay restitution, and they'll stop.
Okay, well, thank you guys. Again, just like Chief Coleman, everyone here have contact numbers. If you really look at it, they have an opportunity for participation. Sheriff Tim, tell us the program that you have for the youth that you have.
Well, we have I have a junior deputies program that starts right after January. It's hunter's education, safety, where they go to the rifle range usually on the weekends. But I can tell you, it's not a program where we encourage. This ain't just a parent to dump your child off. This is an opportunity to spend quality time with your child. And we do that. We sign up. You sign up in January, and they actually go to compete in wildlife, ID, hunter's education. They learn how to shoot a bow. They learn how to shoot a shotgun. But basically, sportsman is a sportsman's paradise. And we encourage things like that, and they compete. If y'all didn't realize, Louisiana, at Terrebonne, we like national champions like 8 years in a row. But it's all, but I can tell you, it's the parents' involvement that makes the program. And we foster that. We're sponsoring this year, in June, I think it is. I got to look at my calendar. The state champions we're holding in Terrebonne is going to be the second year. We used to leave out of the parish and go to central Louisiana. Now they got a taste of South Louisiana in Terrebonne, and everybody when it come to our parish on what we're doing. And we do it at the range, and y'all more than welcome to see when the competition goes on, just to see the children go out there and they get to compete among one another. But it's all good fun. But I can tell you right now, everywhere you see a child, you see the parent with her, and it's an opportunity to spend quality time with their children.
Thank you, guys, taking time out of your busy schedules. We'll have Mr. Cook right now, a representative from the Lafourche Parish City Marshal, a representative from the District Attorney's Office, Mr. Gary Williams. One more thing, Mr. Cook, I was talking to Mr. Frank Kidd. We have computer classes that are being taken away from Terrebonne, H.L. Bourgeois, and other areas that we have a lack of participation. So what we spend quality time, like the sheriff said, spend quality time with your children. Don't let the game watch your children. Mr. Cook?
Good afternoon. First of all, obedience to God. Secondly, to Pastor Brown and Pastor Clark, and also officers and members of the Eagle Wright Baptist Church. I am Marshal Calvin Cooks. I'm the elected marshal in Thibodaux. And before becoming marshal, I was a Thibodaux police officer. I retired in 2020 as a captain. And I can tell you, I've worked closely with Chief Dana Coleman on many, many cases. He was chief of detectives at one time, and I was chief of detectives in Thibodaux, and we'd call each other back and forth. If he had an incident in Homer, he'd call me. Sometime it was wee hours of the morning. I answered the phone, and vice versa. And we always worked together, and I still have that same relationship with Chief Coleman, Sheriff Tim Swannier, Sheriff Craig Weber, and any other local law enforcement agency, state, federal, and local in this area. But I can tell you, in 1990, I started my career in 1990 as a Lafourche Parish Sheriff's Deputy, and in 91, I transitioned over to the Thibodaux Police Department, and in 1997, I became the supervisor for, some people say the housing projects, but I always call it public housing. And at that time, when I got that job, I was tasked with drug activity, frequent shootings, resisting the officer, fighting the police. They had payphones at that time, at the time saver on Tiger Drive. The youngsters at 11 o'clock at night would call 911 and lure Thibodeau police inside the housing projects, and they had bricks in the ditch, and they start breaking the windows on the police cars. So that's the job I was tasked with. And when I got that job, I started making a difference immediately. But I can tell you, I always tell people, it's hard to be a good police officer. It's harder to be a good African-American police officer. So from my job duties in public housing and arresting people, and those arrests caused families to be evicted because parents was not watching their children and the children was committing the crime, so everybody had to go. Well, I'm a member of the Moses Baptist Church in Thibodeau, and my pastor is Reverend Lloyd Jones Jr., and he always tell everybody, shake your neighbor's hand. I went to shake this lady's hand. She looked at me, not me, you better get away from me. She was upset with me. I see them in the grocery store. They mad at me. You know, so I can echo what Chief Coleman has said about being a good police officer, but who I am and who I have to police and who was committing the majority of the crime who I had to deal with in public housing, 85%, you know, people who look like me. And the same parents would get upset with me. I can tell you, in 1981, I was 11 years old. My brother and I stole some bikes. My mama called the police and had us arrested. And I caught a whipping. I never forgot that. If my mama wouldn't have done that, where would I be today? Would I be here? I thank my mama today for what she did. And I tell all parents, be a parent, not your child's friend. Okay? If you see your child got brand new shoes, or he got a brand new watch, you know you didn't buy that. You need to investigate to find out where he got the money to get it. But no, some of the kids paying some bills for mom and daddy. So, you know, they kind of look the other way. That's a problem, you know, and listen, people get mad at me. They've gotten mad at me before, but I don't bite my tongue. Wrong is right is right. You know, we need to start governing our children. And that's where it starts at. It starts at toddlers. Working public housing, I dealt with parents every day. You got 3-year-olds, they making them cuss you. Show them the middle finger. Say F you. So I tell them, what's going to happen when this child go to school? What you think they're going to do to the teacher? You got children telling teachers, my mama going to get you. You better not mess with me. I'm going to call my mama for you. I know. I drove school bus for over 20 years. So I dealt with children on that side. So, you know, listen, we got to come together as parents and stop protecting our children. That's where it starts at. We got to get on top of this. The Thibodeau City Marshal's Office will always work with the law enforcement agencies. Lafourche Parish Sheriff's Office is the chief law enforcement agency in Lafourche Parish. Thibodeau Police Department is the chief law enforcement agency in the city, okay? People call me all the time, Calvin, listen, so-and-so is causing a problem on St. Charles Street. You need to call Thibodeau Police Department, okay? If you call Thibodeau Police and you want somebody evicted, they're gonna tell you to call the Thibodeau City Marshal's Office. So we don't overstep our boundaries. We're trying to work with all law enforcement agencies in the area. The Marshal's Office, we are tasked with protecting city court. If city court issues an order, whether it's a warrant, we're gonna come and look for you. If they issue a subpoena for you to come to court, we're gonna come serve you with a subpoena. If you borrowed some money from the finance company and you didn't pay, we're gonna come serve you with some paperwork. You know, you being sued. You know, if you didn't pay for your car and they got a repossession order on your car, we come and look for the car. That's what we do on the civil side. On the criminal matter, okay, the marshal office does have criminal enforcement responsibilities. If I have a deputy marshal that's in the neighborhood that's issuing a subpoena to someone and you get a car that blows through a stop sign, that deputy marshal is gonna stop you. He's equipped with traffic citations and criminal summonses. If he's gonna use discretion, but if he thinks you need to get a ticket, he's gonna write you a ticket. If you got a warrant for your arrest, he may take you into custody, okay? But I can tell you, since I took office last year, we're not looking to put people in jail. One of my commitments was to alleviate a lot of the warrants for people's arrest, a lot of misdemeanor warrants. We got something now through the Thibodeau City Marshal's office called a 211 summons. In other words, if you have a warrant for your arrest, and we advertise it on Facebook, if you got a warrant for your arrest, call the Marshal's office. We're gonna give you a new court date. We're gonna write you a criminal summons, 211 summons, with a new court date, and that's gonna recall your warrant. It can't get any better than that. You know, we looking to help people. You know, that's what we do. But we need you all's help. We can't do it alone. We can't do it alone. You know, if I go into a lot of the neighborhoods that I grew up in, if I go down Eagle Drive and I ask a kid, you want to be a police officer? They tell you no. No, they don't want, because they are taught that we are bad. We not good people. And listen, I'm not going to tell you that you don't have some bad apples out there, but as administrators, we do our best to get rid of the bad apples. And if you see something, a police officer doing something not supposed to be doing, give us a call. We're not going to look the other way. We are proud of our agencies, and we want you to be proud of us. You know, Mr. Rainey talked about programs for children. I've been doing Angola trips for children for many, many years now. We offer that to Lafourche Parish students. If you have, and listen, it's not just students that have issues in school. It's anybody. You can have straight A's. If your parents call me and we got an opening, we're gonna put you on the list. We take this trip to Angola and we talk to inmates. Mostly one of them was somebody had been there since he was like 16 years old. He had been in there for 25 years. He made a mistake. We trying to teach him to make the right choices. It's always make the right choice. You know, I made a bad choice. Everybody make a mistake, but my parents taught me you were wrong and we not gonna uphold you. You know, so we need that same cooperation from everybody in this room. And we need you to go out and tell your neighbors, you know, what we talked about and what we need y'all to do. Without you all, you know, we cannot be successful. So in closing, Mr. Harding, I really, really appreciate you asking us to come down. When I was leaving, my wife said, well, where you going? I said, I'm going to Eagle Wright Baptist Church to a meeting in Terrebonne Parish. And Terrebonne, you don't have any jurisdiction over there. I said, I know, but I said Sheriff Weber and a lot of other administrators are going to be there too. It's a regional thing that they're calling everybody in, you know, because crime it just don't stay in Homer. It's going to cross over the line to Thibodeau. It may go to Assumption, and it may make the circle and come back all around, you know. But when you got agencies that's cooperating with each other and they're using the same information, then guess what? You know, we can stop the crime. When I took over last year, for the first time in the history of the Thibodeau City Marshal's office, which has been operating since 1955, we own the same law enforcement system with the Sheriff's Office, Thibodeau Police, and every other agency in Lafourche Parish. You know, I see Lieutenant Morrison over there. I just spoke to him 2 days ago. A parent called me about a child. It wasn't even in my area, but, you know, she may not know Lieutenant Morrison, but we have a good working relationship. So he called me, matter of fact, because he heard I was trying to get in contact with him. Worked that out, he resolved the issue. You know, so sometimes, you know, you may not know the person that's in charge of certain areas, but you may know somebody else that you feel comfortable with talking to. And you know what? We accept that. When people call our office wanting to talk about an issue, we take the information, then we pass it on to where it needs to go. You know, so in closing, I thank you, and we really appreciate it. And if y'all need something from the Thibodeau City Marshal's office, you can contact me or my secretary. My secretary is Ms. Gretchen Caillouette. The number is 985-446-7264. And also, I have an open door policy. And my secretary, she makes fun of me. She said, because why give my number out, Calvin? Because she said, everybody got your cell phone number. My cell phone number is 985-637-0813. If you need me, call me. Thank you.
Before Gary comes, Mr. Cook, what are your office hours?
My office hours is 8 to 4:30.
Do you work on weekends?
I'm 24 hours. My office hours is 8 to 4:30, but I'm 24 hours. That's why I could do myself.
Okay, but then see, that's that might be a part of the problem on the visibility with the people and the arrest. I walk the street a lot. Some of the people that got warrants, you won't find them, not until your office closed or on the weekend.
Well, I mean, but listen, the 211 service, it's not just the marshal office. The sheriff's office, the criminal PD, they offer the same service. Every agency offers that.
But what I'm asking, and nothing to offend you, but I'm just saying how to make it better. If you want some of these criminals off the street, they know you're not going to be there at 4:30. You're not going to send nobody looking for them at 4:30, after 4:30. Then they hit the streets. On the weekend, then they hit the streets.
Right.
So the system, what we're trying to say here now is the fact that if you have a violent criminal that's out there, and you know, and you want to clear up the system, trust me, you have to work hand in hand with law enforcement.
And listen, and this is why I give my cell phone number out, because a lot of people have relayed to me that I call a dispatcher, they ask me all types of personal questions, who are you, what's this and that. So listen, I say call me, and I'll relay it to the dispatcher, but I'm not going to tell them where I got it from, but we're going to get the job done. You know, and I understand a lot of people are scared about retaliation in their neighborhoods, you know, so that's why I try to work closely with them and give them my number. You know, you can come by my house, everybody know where I live at, you know, I got that open door policy. And I've been like that for years, and that's why I've been able to solve so much crime, you know, but we have to work together, and we do that, you know. And listen, it's not, I can't do it by myself. I need everybody in this room, and I need to have a good working relationship with other law enforcement agencies, which we do have that. I can call anybody in this room at law enforcement. Also right there with the sheriff's office. Got their cell phone numbers, and we're going to get it done.
What's your number?
985-637-0813.
I let enough also, I lost my cell phone, I'll get it somewhere down the line. That was a situation where one of my constituents called me, and oftentimes they call me when something happened in the neighborhood to try to subdue some things without anything going any further. And I go out there, and the lady is saying, well, why are we calling the police? And so, well, we have somebody that's injured out here. So, well, we don't want the police around here in our business and this, that, and that. The snitches get stitches. 2 weeks later, she didn't want the police involved, but then 2 weeks later, her son gets shot. She didn't want the police to be involved. She called me. She said, well, what are we going to do about this? We need to find this person. We need to find that person. And it goes back to what was said. Sometimes, you know, the shiny cars and all the money and your bills being paid is not worth your child going to jail for the rest of his life or you going to the funeral home. It's not worth it. Me and Pastor Brown was talking about, in part of his scriptures, with that, a man don't work, he don't want to eat. And my stepfather said, and he don't live in my house. Simple. Gary, thank you for waiting.
Hey, how everybody doing? Most of you know me as Lil Gary, but I'm Gary Williams Jr. I work for the DA's office. I've been a prosecutor for 6 years. And right now I handle mainly felony prosecutions in Judge Ellender's courtroom. I'd like to thank Mr. Harding for putting on this program. And I'll be quick. It's different now, even from when I was younger. It's two things I want to touch on. Social media. Social media plays a big part with a lot of our criminal cases and just with the youth. I don't know if you noticed, but they all on Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, and they're all on social media. Sometimes I can figure out a case just by getting on social media. That's how prevalent and that's how much the youth are on it. So just be mindful of that. You know, if you got young kids, monitor that because, man, they doing all kind of stuff on social media. Also, it's working, and Sheriff Weber will tell you, working in the public, it's, you know, a lot of communities get stigmas, and they say don't go to this area, don't do that. But dealing with the public, we deal with everybody. I deal with white, I deal with black, I deal with Hispanic, gay, straight. So we deal with everybody. It's not a black people problem. It's not a white people problem. It's a Terrebonne Parish problem. We got a lot of crime, and y'all see it. And it's probably because it's social media and everything's in the paper now. Somebody does something, it's going up in 10 minutes. Thanks to Dan Copp. No, I'm just kidding. But it's, as a community, we're dealing with some weird times right now. I know I sound like an older guy saying I'm only 32, but it's different from when I was growing up. So just be mindful of that. I want to give y'all a story. Recently, and I was at a Pelicans game, but I got a call from a sheriff's deputy. Young guy just started. And I'm gonna show you how we interact with each other. He was dealing with a situation where it was a guy who just said my name that I grew up with. Now this guy had just got out of jail for serving 12 years in jail for selling drugs. So they already knew who he was, they knew what kind of guy he was, but they were dealing with a dispute. So the guy mentioned my name, and luckily that deputy called me. I think if that deputy called me, my friend would probably be in jail. But he called me, and he kind of gave me the background of what was going on. And so I said, well, look, I said, give me 10 minutes. I said, I'll call you back. I said, don't do anything yet. I called my friend, he's irate. I said, well, look, you about to go to jail. He cursing me out. He cursing, the police still there, the deputy. He's cursing the deputy out. I said, hey man, you better chill out because you're going to jail. You might go to jail. I said, so I talked to my friend and I talked to the officer. The officer didn't have to do this. I can't tell him how to do his job, but he talked to me. He said, well, tell me about this guy. I said, well, I'm gonna tell you, I grew up with him. I said, we the same age. I said, yeah, he made some mistakes. I see why he's upset. I said, I don't think you need to arrest him. I said, I think you can do this and this and this. I said, look, he's not a bad guy. He's just in a bad situation right now. Luckily, that guy didn't go to jail that day. The deputy listened to me. He didn't have to at all. And I told the deputy, if that was me and the guy was getting irate with me, I probably would have arrested him. But he called me. He had the intelligence. And he just thought about it. He said, well, let me ask him. This guy's a district attorney, and I wanted to see what's going on with his friends. So I told him the situation went from being at a 10 to about a 2. Everything's figured out. And look, usually we don't get that. I hate to say this, but at the district attorney's office, when it gets to me, it's too late. Usually the crime has already happened, or the deed's been done. When it gets to me, I got to figure out what to do with the person. So I'm last resort, and I always tell it to families, and I always tell it to people, look, I'm last resort. When it gets to me, the person's either been arrested or a summons has been wrote. Mr. Harden, I know you wanted me to touch on a few things.
We don't want to get the public to think that we just actually just saying, look, we law enforcement, this is what we want to do, beat this down your head, this, that, and the other, because even though this place should be filled with people that are concerned, just recently a guy was telling me about how people feel as if that they go to jail for minor offenses. They can't make bail. They sat in jail for maybe a year, a little over a year. They can't get a bond reduction. They can't get out of jail. They this, that, and the other. And finally, when they go to court, they could have been out of jail 6 months later. They have situations where people may have been arrested, and a family member goes down because someone within the house was foul. And sometimes they can get caught up in circumstances where they're losing their jobs only by association. And we want to protect the citizens because oftentimes when our siblings are doing wrong, sometimes we can't deter them. And there are instances with the district attorney's office and how you handle the cases, whereas you might hold somebody down. And I know some instances where, you know what I mean, people, they got professional positions and their family members put them in jeopardy, where a nurse can lose her job, or someone else that have a civil service job can lose their job because they are associated co-signing and stuff like that. Could you touch base on some of that?
That's a lot. In reference to, you know, people staying in jail, right now we make an effort to not keep anybody as long as they should be. Usually, unless it's a serious offense, we try to give them a reasonable bond to make. But, you know, sometimes you get some of the serious crimes and you kind of don't want that person out on the streets. Now, with people just sitting, I saw this firsthand for the hurricane. You know, we didn't even have a jail, and we had to ship people from all across North Louisiana and to different areas. It wasn't anything we could do. We tried our best, but, you know, I always tell people this too: the criminal justice system, it doesn't move fast. It's really slow. And if anybody has ever been part of a even civil case or criminal case, it takes forever. It's just the way it goes. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. But anyone want to entertain a question in reference to district attorney's office? Because a lot of times people say, "Look, call the district attorney." This is your opportunity, people.
Yeah, I would like to know. I had a 16-year-old, had never been in trouble before, and he didn't have prevention to stop him from getting into trouble. So he left home one morning and he went to Grand Caillou in the trailer area over there. And he had a gun and I don't know what you call it, little pack of weed. I don't know what you call it. But he had that. And he got caught.
Yep.
And that first offense. And when he was turning 17, he was in Hunts Correctional Center. I think they should, for first offense, they should try to prevent these children from going to penitentiary. Put them in something that they can do, a boot camp or something, because I figure once you go to penitentiary, you are exposed to all activities.
Yeah. Generally, on the first offense, if it's not anything too violent, you usually can get probation. We try to give somebody, or we even offer them, we call it PTI or pretrial diversion. We try to get them away from court. But sometimes, if it's serious enough, you know, they can be charged as adults and they can be subject to some heavy jail. But I'll say this: for the 6 years, majority of what we deal with is, I'll say, 65 to 75% is just ordinary people that's making some really dumb decisions. Now you got your worst of the worst who's doing some cruel stuff, but that's what we're dealing with a lot. And I can tell you that's our goal at the DA's office. We'd like to give people second, sometimes third chances if we can. Yeah. Now I don't know what happened with him because that's rare. Yeah. Okay. Well, good. I wasn't there, so you can't blame me. So.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Do you mix the good with the bad in the jail? Like, a little bitty thing, and people that gonna be there a long time. Because when they go to jail, some harm might come to good people. You know, like for doogie up in the church and you know all that jail harm.
Sheriff Tim.
Well, anything when you look at crimes and when they're incarcerated, we'd go through classifications. So they are classified on how they're placed.
Yeah, just out of clarification, when people are incarcerated, there are one of two categories of incarceration. People that are that have not been tried and not been convicted, people that are presumed innocent, those are people we call pre-trial. They have not been through the system. They are all classified as very complicated. It's the only very complicated place, like an emergency room. Because you can't tell who's getting arrested, what crime they're getting arrested for, and what their background is. Just like you don't know somebody's coming in prison with a heart attack or a hook in their finger. So you might get an 80-year-old person with diabetes and heart trouble and dementia who committed sex crimes 30 years ago. You might get a 19-year-old pregnant female who may not be positive. You might get just a guy who's never been in any trouble. So that classification process is critical. Then you have to decide, are there any enemies? Are there people that they want to get back to? So the classification is very technical. So we do endeavor to separate people and put them in places where they won't be victim or some victims are ultimately victims. The other category are people who are serving a sentence. They've been given a sentence for 5 years, 50 years, whatever it might be. They're classified also, but they typically go in a penitentiary setting. We can keep some short-term people like that in our jails, but we wouldn't keep a 50-year sentence type person. And the same thing, we classify them. But the difference is that entry-level population, you don't know who you're getting, when you're getting them, what you're getting. We have to detox a lot of people. They come into jail after an arrest, and we got to go through a detox protocol just to make sure they don't die because they're not using drugs while they're incarcerated. So jail is a very difficult, complex process. And even though we do our best, sometimes somebody will get in a fight and somebody, but that's out of this one.
Yeah, please bring the message back, because most people that may be affected by a program like this, you won't find them in here. You find them when you leave out and go and pass them up tonight. Now, we're getting to one of the most important parts of this program. I'm going to have Mr. Joe Harris come up and tell the story. Then I'm going to have Miss Carolyn McNair come tell the story about our children. About our children.
I'm going to give you some information to hopefully help you understand when we talk about juveniles, exactly what is going on with them and how it's connected to our community and what you can do to help. I was having a conversation just on yesterday with Sheriff Sonia. We was talking about corrections. I'm a part of corrections. Understanding what corrections is we're trying to correct the behavior, not necessarily the individual, but correct the behavior to put that individual on a better path. Juvenile detention. Well, what constitutes as a juvenile? Juvenile is from 10 to 17 years of age. 10 to 17 years of age. 10 years old. 17. Back to when you say your son got in trouble, man. If he would have been 17, if he would have been in this time, now, he will be considered as a juvenile. The laws have just changed. Before, it was up to 16. Now it includes 17 years of age that they're considered juvenile. So he would have come to a facility known as juvenile detention. In juvenile detention, I would like to call myself, I am providing a service to the community. I am really in essence, I am a program. A program to help kids understand and to get better. One of the things that we try to do and make note of is that individuals coming to us, we're trying to make them better than we receive them. For them to go back to the community to be better individuals, to be more productive. And when I say that, one of the things that we do in juvenile detention number one, we have a behavior modification program. Behavior modification means we're trying to, again, adjust the behavior. What they used to do, we're not going to accept that. If you do it, there are consequences for your actions. We make that understood up front. Number two is, there is no option whether you go to school or not go to school, you're going to school. We have a school on premises. We can accommodate you to be able to get your GED, get your Carnegie Union, and also you can take your high set. Also, if you're a graduate, we can also sign you up for classes at Fletcher or me. So we're giving you the tools and the opportunity to be better. That's what we want to do as individuals working with our juvenile. Everyone may see that as, well, yeah, that's a jail. Yes, it is a jail. It's called custody, care, and control. And the reason why we're here is to protect the kid and protect the community. And the third part is just to make sure that kid is available for court to go see the judge, so he or she would not get in any more trouble. That's what we provide as a service, again, to the community. As I heard Mr. Calvin and Dana speak, you know, most of the kids that's in detention look like me. I had 388 kids that I took into the facility. 243 of those kids look like me. That's 80% of our kids coming to the facility that day. Also, with that programming, most of the kids that come in, that's what they are. Boys. All 80% of those are young men that could potentially end up in the adult system. And that's what we're trying to avoid. We're taking that into mind. Again, having programming available to these kids. We have a thriving daily schedule that goes from in the morning to at night. One of the other things that we do, we have a life skills program that we have for these kids. A life skills program that teaches them how to go fill out an application, how to dress, how to talk. We also teach them, you know what, if you want a job, babysitting service. We teach them how to paint. We teach them how to garden. We teach them a little. We even teach them etiquette, how to sit at the table, how to conduct yourself. In your mind, you're asking, you went out of detention? Why that? Some of us take for granted how our parents raised us and assume everyone else knows. All the kids we see is not always their fault. Some of them are coming from some destitute background. And when I say that, could you imagine a kid every day in a household, parents telling them, you ain't gonna never be nothing, you ain't gonna never grow up to be nothing, you're gonna be just like your dad, look at you now, I don't know why you're around me, get away from me. You already been talking too negative. What the hope is to them. But yet still, I want to say this. They come to juvenile detention as jail. Supposed to be negative in connotation. But when we come to them, when they come to us, we get clean sheets, clean clothes, they get shoes on their feet, it's safe, it's secure. We feed them wholesome meals. They ain't got to fight for it, they ain't got to beg for it, they ain't got to steal it. We're being positive with them, telling them they're all going to be something. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't achieve this, you can't be a fireman, you can't be a police, you can't be a doctor. We're being positive with them. Juvenile detention, that's what y'all do. Yes, that's what we do. Why? No. This is one thing, please don't get this concept messed up. We're not a babysitting service. We are holding them accountable for their actions as we should or should be doing as parents. So essentially we become the parents. We become the uncle, we become the grandma, we become everything, we become the counselor, we become everything. And my dialogue with you may be a little bit different than everyone else. I want to give you the background first so you can have a clear understanding of what we're doing. So when someone comes in and says this is about this and that about juvenile detention, you say, oh no, Mr. Harris himself said this is exactly what it is. As always, when you talk about transparency, we want to always be transparent. We want you to know what's going on with your kids. We want you to be able to talk to them. Just the other day, I was on a phone conference. We were talking about shipping juveniles out of the state to Mississippi. Can we do that? And if you don't have a juvenile detention within your region, you may have to do that. So the other component is that we're fortunate, not a connotation as being negative, we're fortunate to have a juvenile detention center within our own parish, providing services to our community kids, our own kids. And the reason why I say that, because if a kid has programming or has to go to a counseling service, we are able to take them ourselves. Or if we need to have a phone call, talk to the parent, or they need to visit, they're able to get to the juvenile detention center right down the street. But if a kid is shipped off to Mississippi, how can you feel them? How can you touch them? How do you know what they're doing? Or they get treated right? Or they get the services that they need? Then we're missing the gap in that. We're missing the gap in that. When you talk about parenting skills, it's a story I often tell from time to time. I was pretty much raised by my mom. My daddy worked off. So she was everything in between. What her best job was, she didn't have to call the police. She was the police. She took care of it every single day. And even though she's passed away, I thank her for that often. Because again, where would we be? She held me accountable. She made sure I understood right from wrong. She made sure I remained respectful. And those are the only small things that we're asking our parents to do when raising our kids. It goes back to Mr. Calvin said. We're not here to be your friend. We're not here to hang out with you. We're here to guide you to have a productive life. All I ask my kids is that, you know what? If you need juvenile detention, show me. Don't tell me, show me. I just want you to be a part of the community, be productive, and pay taxes like me. I just need a little help, pay some taxes. But again, a lot of our kids face a lot of challenges. This world is totally different. Social media is harmful, but also can be helpful. Social media's PlayStation or Sega Genesis or whatever they call it is not the babysitting service. Number one, programming can start at home. 1 hour, spend 1 hour with your child. Just 1 hour. Help, it goes a long way. You know what's going on, you know what's happening. Just 1 hour. Programming, summer camps, Sir Sonia program is helpful. But also, let's get back to what we started the program in. Let's get back to having those programs in our churches. Bringing those kids in. That's the component that we miss. I don't care if you set up a program and one child comes. Guess what? You just affected one child.
Amen.
And you saved one. The analogy I always use, I can do this job for 30 years. If I say one child a year, that's 30. All of us sitting in here today could do the same thing. That grows exponentially. 30 years, 30 kids, 40 years, 40 kids. And let's look at the population of the parish alone. I have a 32-bed facility. 32-bed facility. If one person can change one kid's life per year for 30 years, all I need is 32 people from the community to take an active part in a juvenile's life. Think about that. An active part. Don't mean you got to spend all day with them. Just take an active part in a juvenile's life. So, for me, this is a passion, this is a cause. It's not just me standing up here speaking to you. It's my passion to change as many lives as I can along the way. Someone just called me, I got an email and I got a call from a parent saying I'm having trouble with my 16-year-old. He's out of control, he keeps getting in trouble in school. What do I do with him? First, I got to sit down. I need to have a conversation with the parent, with the child, and see exactly what's going on. Because it may be something as simple as, you know what, you're doing everything you're supposed to do, keep doing what you're doing. It's one good thing that I understand about juveniles, they're very, very resilient.
Yes.
When they're not paying attention, they are paying attention to everything that you do. And one of the things I convey to my staff is that make sure you conduct yourself professionally 100% of the time because kids are watching. They're following your example. They're listening to what you're saying. One of the programs that I have that comes into the facility is we have different churches coming. And one of the things I pride myself on, I say, no, I don't want you to put the kids up, whoever don't want to participate, leave them out. Let them go sit on the side. Because sometimes when the kids you think is not listening, they are. So even the other group that's participating with the church, the other child might be listening. Something somebody said or something they did might capture that kid and bring it home. So I want to make sure that every opportunity to see with our kids and make sure that they have a possibility of success. Me and Mr. Carl was talking, and I thank Mr. Carl for inviting me here to be a part of this program because it's very, very vital to the community. Get ready to close this call, sorry. I told her to pass. It's key to all of us in the community to make sure we take care of the community, which is our kids. The two things I can encourage you to do: if you see something, say something. That's simple. If you see it, say something. Don't wait till something go wrong with you. You want everybody to say something. Do that. Number two is, I can't tell you how crime has increased amongst my juveniles when it comes to gun charges. Okay? How they get these guns is number one is they're stealing. Most of them know what they're doing. They go into the car door. Oh, go. Guess what they got in there? A gun. Second point is lock your car doors every single time. Whether you run in or whether if you don't remember, hit the lock. Technology, you can stand in the house and hit it. You don't have to run out there anymore. So lock your car doors. Lock your car doors. I have open door policy. Most of I have open door policy to the community. I have a number that you can contact me at all hours a day. I call it the back phone. It's 985-381-5742. That's my cell. 985-381-5742. My office number is 985-853-1201. Anything I can do to help anyone when it comes to your juveniles, grandkids, or anyone, Give me a call. Let's see what we can do. Sometimes you may be on the right track. It just have to keep going and be a little patient. I'd like to thank everyone, the individuals who spoke before me. Thank you. And please, if you have any concerns, any questions, anything you'd like, please ask. Please call. I'm happy to help out anyway. Something you want to say, Mr. Carl?
I just want to ask to entertain a question to you in person.
So would you comment on the COVID-19 threat to those incarcerated and how it has changed what we're trying to do? Good question, Mr. Wayne. COVID-19 has changed our landscape immensely. We had to put some protocols in place, and those protocols are permanently in place. Right now, that's why we're unable to have visitation, we're unable to have the churches come in. One of the protocols that we conduct is that we make sure everybody has their temperature taken, to make sure we observe it for about 5 days to make sure that they are COVID-free. Our protocol, as for accepting the kids, if you commit a crime, whether you have COVID or not, we're going to accept you. We have the capability of separating you from everyone else in the facility. Each unit has its own single individual room. Then I escort you in, you'll stay there, we'll monitor you. We have a nurse on duty as well. The nurse will be able to monitor and take care of you in addition to that. So for the first 5 days, we're going to monitor you and make sure that you are taken care of. Our numbers, even during COVID, pretty much stayed the same. Nothing really changed. It did look, the numbers that compared to intake from year to year did decrease. But this past year in 21, it increased a little bit. We increased that about 66 kids with intake from the previous year. So COVID-19 doesn't impact us when it comes to if an individual commits a crime. The only thing that it did impact us on, because sometimes we have to help our other surrounding communities, we was unable to take their kids in as we sometimes usually do. So that's the only impact that it occurred.
My question is, the behavior modification programs that you say you have in your facility, are they working with helping to deter the behavior that you're getting from the young people?
Yes, ma'am. I don't know how I operated without a behavior modification program. I can say this. It had decreased our numbers of reports that we write in the facility because of the behavior modification program. And if I give you a small example, our behavior modification program is we give those kids 131 points every Friday. If you try to get a kid to work his way up to 131 points, that doesn't work for our juveniles because they already have a lot going on. They believe we have to have something tangible. So we give them 131 points and they have to keep those points. But if they commit an offense, we'll take those points for each offense that they have. We have certain levels that they're on. We got platinum, gold, silver, and bronze. If you're on the platinum, you still get a choice of whatever you want to eat, or you still get a snack or whatever. But our behavior modification program, more than anything else, is teaching them to be accountable for their actions.
And I love the fact that you said accountable. So this brings me to the counseling part. How do we get, because this is going to be a go back to camp. We have, the program that we're having today is once the intro. We need to figure out how to stop it from getting there. So those programs that he's talking about and is working within his facility, we need to find out how to get them, set them up, government assistance or whatever we need to stop our young people from getting there.
So we frequently budget adjustments to the juvenile areas. I have 2 other colleagues here, and prevention is and all of this is part of the responsibility I'm giving up right now. We started off with government high work. Joe was there in the beginning, and what's stemming out of that first meeting that we have was the fact that prevention. Once we look at the prevention, we deal with the system, such as the city marshal, we deal with the Mr. Joe.
When you talk about prevention is such a large scale, and it's part of the program. And we're working on that to get the programming before they get to us. I'm gonna give you an example. One of the things that just occurred, and the laws just changed, that now they want every child to go to Head Start. Yeah, they need that. It's not having the kids stay at home and then go to kindergarten, but actually have them go to Head Start. And that's some of the things that, when you talk about programming, that even on the state level that they're doing, where they say a kid has to, can or needs to go to Head Start, because they need that advantage, that Head Start to get started in school. That's some of the things that we're doing. As our government goes through the process of developing funding to start those programs, they're coming. But at the same time, I'm gonna go back to my previous statement. As churches and communities, if you don't ask for what you want, you don't get it. Require it. Make it happen. Twice a month we have council meetings. Open to the public. Come in. Express yourself. Monday night and Wednesday night is available, am I right? To speak.
Second and fourth weeks.
Second and 4 weeks. Come in. Express yourself as being a part of the community. Nothing bad. It's for a good reason, good cause. That's why we take the opportunity to vote, to make a change, to voice our opinion. Excellent question.
So you, I'm talking about my granddaughter. She came to your facility one time, and she said she don't want to never go back again. Thank you.
I would think that, yes, you will.
But that's why we're here, Captain Joe, so that we relate this to you and to you to go back to it, also relate it to your colleagues. You see, so they can have an idea of how to help us out too. And some of us knock on that door a million times and we can't get in. So that's why we're here to tell these leaders, to tell each other what we need and what's going to help us. And that's why, just like the lady echoed what I said earlier, we need these programs before we get to that door. When they get to you, they're going to get everything they need. But we don't want them to get to you. We don't want them to get to you.
And that's
I just want to cut your job out. I want you to make that.
But no, you're exactly right. And that's what I'm talking about. We got to go back to the churches. We got to go back to the community. We had a program at Dumont Center. I don't know if it's the after school program. Let's get back to that. Me and Sheriff Sonia was talking about the programming about our kids. Mr. Weber had a conversation a little while back about those programming about the kids. We understand, believe me, we're not just sitting here waiting for someone to do bad to get them into our system. Believe me, that's why Mr. Carl put this on for us, to make sure we have that dialogue. Good dialogue. I mean, this is what we need. Because sometimes we have to be reminded of what we need to do as public officials as well. So, yes, we are doing that. But again, let's start from the community level and say, hey, look, let's go to our churches and say, hey, look, I think we got this program get started. Or we don't have no funding. Okay, then let's go to the council meeting and say, hey, look, this is a program. Let's take the process that we have now, and start with that. We have to start somewhere. I wish I could stand here and say, and wave the wand and say, here it is, but it's called a process. It's just the process that we take with our kids from day one, because they're not going to listen to me if I tell them 1 or 2, 3 times. I probably got to tell them 20 times, don't do that, don't do this here. But guess what? At the end of the day, they finally get it.
Yeah.
Councilman President here, Councilman Dan Gidget. Take it in, I said.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Joe, my name is Carl Beverly, and I do preventive outreach, and I go into facilities as well, vision outreach, and the juvenile detention center that I do in Harding, or Reward Detention Center. And we just started being able to go back in there. I've been doing it for years, and COVID put a strain on everything. And for the last couple of months, we've been going back in and speaking to the kids. They use my my story from a testimonial standpoint. I've written a book called Vision in the Wilderness. And we go in there. You just mentioned earlier that that the visitors or the volunteers and the churches are unable to go in. Is there something set in place where at some point they will be able to go back in to provide those inspirational services for those kids?
Yes, sir. It is. Matter of fact, I just spoke with my team this week. We're supposed to get the plan together to have those individuals come back in, because I was speaking to another association that wanted to come in as well. So we are putting a thing for that. But I think the most important thing is definitely the advertising.
We have one more, and of course, not only Mr. Guidry is here, we have both Guidrys here, Mr. Doug Guidry and Mr. Darren Guidry. Right now, Ms. Carolyn McNabb, and we talk about victims of society. Mr. Joe created a very passionate approach and knowledgeable approach. Ms. McNabb, you may want to, you're not like some of these gentlemen that come up here, you might need a mic. But she's going to present herself to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Carolyn McNabb, and I'm the Executive Director of Lewis Children Crisis Center in Houma. We operate we used to have 3 residential homes for children who have been taken away from their parents and who are in the custody of the state of Louisiana. So we raise these children, they live with us, and we try to prepare them for life, hopefully with a foster family or an adoptive family. And that's what I do. And I'm gonna talk to you today about early intervention, but first of all, I wanna tell you, I've spent 6 decades on this earth, and I have observed a lot and been fortunate enough to work with a lot of you people in my professional career with regard to children's advocacy. And I can tell you that the solution to the crime problem in Terrebonne Parish is in buildings like this with people like you. When faith-based community and law enforcement and the judicial system and community organizations come together to tackle a problem, that's where the power is. And so I'm very happy to see this effort, and I thank all of the organizers for putting this together, because this is the answer, make no mistake about that. I also want to take this opportunity to give props to the Sheriff's Department for Terrebonne and Chief Dana Coleman, who I think has left. We've had to call on them from time to time. The children who come to us come sometimes with some very extreme behaviors because they've been traumatized, sexually, physically, emotionally, and they come from terrible backgrounds. And so, as we know, trauma affects children's brains, and it causes them to exhibit behaviors that seem very bizarre. And there have been times when we have had to call law enforcement to come out and assist us with children who we call it wilding out, but they're acting out in extreme ways, and we need assistance. And I can tell you that the officers, to the very last one, have been not just professional, but compassionate. And we appreciate that so much. And that's why we don't hesitate to call, because we have faith in what you do. And props to you guys for the training, because it's evident in the way that they're able to handle the kids. So we thank you for that. Early intervention, I also want to mention that I've worked for a long time with Joe Harris, back to the year 2000, and everything he said to you is true. That man is as fine a children's advocate in this parish as I have ever known. And yes, he runs a juvenile detention facility, but he cares about the children there, and he is vested in turning them out in a better way than when he got them. And you can believe him when he says that. I've seen it with my own 2 eyes. So what we've learned, we've had a lot of psychiatric training and psychological training in trauma-induced behaviors in children. So if you can identify these behaviors and get these children help early enough, you can, in fact, change the trajectory of their lives. I had a teacher tell me years ago that every third grade teacher can identify the at-risk children in their classroom. They know that young. So if we really want to address all aspects of the crime problem in Terrebonne Parish, we need to look to the children. I used to do criminal defense work. I represented a 17-year-old accused of murder years ago, and I had represented him as a juvenile. What I learned was just astounding, and it was that when this child was 10 years old, his mother was severely mentally ill. I don't think his dad was around. He was one of 6 or 7 children. They lived in poverty. And when this child was 10 years old, he formed alliances with other children who sort of lived in the street. They would form alliances to find food. And they would learn whose mother was home and had a pot of food on the stove, or whose grandmother had food on the stove, or where they could go to get a few hours of sleep where they were safe. And that's what early gang alliances start looking like, that these children start relying on one another for things like food and safety and security. So if you can identify these at-risk youth when they're 10 or 11 years old and give them some resources, that's where you can really make a dent in the pipeline into the criminal justice system. Because I view my job as keeping my kids away from Joe Harris. but that's where the real evidence is in terms of putting resources on kids. The earlier the better. Early intervention, early intervention, early intervention. Now, that being said, I want to tell you a happy story because it just happened last week. But I had a child a few years ago who was 12, and she was hell on wheels. And the reason they sent her to us was because nobody else could do anything with her. She bounced around from foster family to foster family. She was fighting with other kids in school, wouldn't listen to the teachers, wouldn't go to school half the time. She was really headed in the wrong direction. And so we got her, and I noticed 2 things about her right off the bat. Now, she was 11, about to turn 12, and she was as tall as I am, so we weren't ever gonna have physical domination over her of any kind. She was big. She was a tall kid. But I noticed 2 things about her right off the bat. One was that she had a wicked smart sense of humor. Now, it came out as sass, but it was smart, and she was funny. And the second thing I noticed about her, we have a basketball court at one of the homes, and my office window faces the basketball court, so I watch the kids play. I watched her playing basketball, and I used to be an athlete, so I recognize athletic talent when I see it. So I went outside, and I said, "You're pretty good at basketball. Did you ever play on a team?" And she looked at me like I had 2 heads. She said, "No." She came from a terrible background. Mother was severely mentally ill, drug addict. Father was an alcoholic. She had 6 siblings. They'd all been in and out of jail and juvenile detention, and that's where she was headed. So I guess that was a stupid question. I asked her if she'd ever played on a basketball team. So she looked at me really strange. And I said, "Where'd you learn to play?" And she said, "In the street." And I said, "You're really good. Would you like to be on a basketball team?" And she didn't respond. And I said, "Because we have a parish recreation program here, and they're having the girls' basketball teams getting ready to start up. They're having sign-ups. Would you like to be on a team?" And she said, "Yeah, I would." So look, this was luck. I wish I could remember the name of the coach whose team she was on. But he took that team to the championship that summer in that age division. So this young lady got to take her picture with a big gold medal around her neck, holding a trophy. And it was the proudest I think she'd ever been of herself in her life. And it was a little rocky because, you know, she took an attitude with him every now and then because he would yell at her while she was on the court, yelling instructions to her. And she had walked off the court one time, and I went to all her games. I was her biggest cheerleader. So I went and got her, and I said, what are you doing? And she said, I don't have to listen to him yell at me. And I said, he's yelling at you because he sees the talent in you, and he wants you to be better. When he's yelling at you, he's telling you how to be better. He wants you to succeed. So she stayed on the team. Anyway, she ended up playing in the championship game. And then, you know, we had some ups and downs with her, but we started explaining to her how important it was for her to do well in school. And we expected her to go to school, and we expected her to do schoolwork and homework and projects and make good grades. Her grades started coming up, and the behavior started falling away. It's not magic. It takes time. We had her for a year. So it took about a year, and then finally we had some people interested in providing foster care for her. So she almost ended up with an older sister, but that placement fell through, and then she almost ended up with another lady, and that fell through. So, which is typical of these kids' lives. They just bounce sometimes from person to person. But the difference was there were people expressing an interest in her now because she was developing a track record. And so, long story short, she ended up with a lady in Baton Rouge who was her foster mother, who was also a girls basketball coach. And this past basketball season, that team won a championship in their division. And last week in Facebook, I saw a picture of her and the lady in court for the adoption. So she's been adopted. So that's a happy story. Thank you. They all deserve props for that. Great story. But I'm telling you, when a child gets to be 12 or 13 years old, it's a long shot for a happy story like this. And she's just lucky she landed with us, and I'm lucky she landed with that basketball coach. And she got a lot of lucky breaks, and God knows she deserved them because she had never had any. But the point of all of this is, you never know. Sometimes most of our kids are never going back to a parent, so they're going to be dependent on somebody else to give them some kind of family life. So you can, in the community or in your church or in whatever organization you participate in, if you see a child struggling or you become aware of a child who's starting to have trouble, you can make a difference in that child's life. Sometimes it just takes one person to express an interest and to show that child that yes, there's something good about you. Yes, there's something special about you. Yes, somebody loves you. That makes a huge difference. And so that's why I was asked to come, because I've seen this happen over and over with younger children. If you can put the right group around them or the right family around them or the right team around them, it's amazing what a difference it can make. So don't underestimate that. And the little Irish Catholic nun who started the program that I run right now, Sister Rosario, told me you can indeed save the world one child at a time. And that's what we should aspire to. And that's what I think everybody in this room is dedicated to. And that's what's going to make the ultimate difference. Thank you.
Thank you. That's an avenue that we have, and funding with a lot of things. Thank you, Ms. McNabb. School Board President, you have anything to say?
Good afternoon, Mr. Harding. I'm Carl Harding, little big brother. He didn't say that. My name is Gregory Harding, and I'm the school board president. And there was a lot of great things that was said here today, and I'm not going to be redundant on what was said, but I think I'm going to follow in the footsteps of Ms. McNabb, saying that education is the way to go. Before children are born, or before you see Mr. Joe Harris, before they see the sheriff or the DA, they see us. They see us in school. We are the way. We're wondering why, or what can we do? One of the biggest things that we can do is education. Because if you go back and look at 80% or 90% of those kids that's incarcerated, the bulk of them do not have a formal education. That is one of the key areas that is important. What we are doing now is that we are partnership with a wraparound company that we're going to start going out and counseling kids at a young age. Because if a kid do not make between first and fourth grade, you can pretty much forget it. Between first and fourth grade. That's why it's very important for that Head Start program. Our systems, sometimes these kids come to school, that's the only meal they get. That's the only safety they get. You know, we talk about TPR, we talk about coaches. You know, I'm involved with TPR Recreation. And when we have meetings, with coaches meetings, I tell a coach this. I say a kid is not going, 10 years from now, is not going to remember how many games you won. He's going to remember what he learned or she learned. Team concept. Sometimes we can't reach our own children. It takes others to reach them. Janitors, secretaries, just anybody out there. And this is the last thing I'm going to say, and I think we need to home in on this. You say it just takes one. It just save one person. But you never know what that one person is going to affect on life. You never know what that one person that you save is going to turn out to be. That person could be the President of the United States, the next best scientist. So you just never know that. So just don't take it for granted, just saving one. And in closing, I'm going to say like the old ministers normally would say, the harvest is plentiful. I say the harvest is plentiful, but the labors are few. And you can look out here today and witness that the labors are few. The ones that need to hear what's being said today are not here. We're singing to the choir. So what we need to do, we need to go out there, out in the community, and let the community know what's going on. Again, Carl, thank you, man, for all your hard work. I hope you wasn't embarrassed to say that I was your brother, but I'm your little big brother, you know what I'm saying? But that's my brother Carl. I love him to death. And thank you, man. Thank you. And may God bless everybody in here. Thank you.
Mr. Guidry, would you like to say anything? Mr. Darren Guidry, then Mr. Dirk Guidry.
First of all, Pastor Brown, Pastor Clark, Carl, thank you for all working together in this. You know, we're here to solve a problem. And in order to solve a problem, we all have to work together. And that includes our law enforcement system, that includes our judicial system, it includes our school board system, and it also includes your local government. How we can help is, first of all, bringing the community together to do this type of discussion. And this is our second time we've done this, and we need to continue this discussion that needs to happen. The second thing is funding the right programs. As you heard from Mr. Joe, you know, we have to make sure that the funding is in the right place, and we're working together with our sheriff and our institutions to make sure that happens. It's not it's one of the primary reasons why Mr. Carl was one of my first choices to chair our Budget and Finance Committee. So we could work together to look at where our funding is going and making sure it's going into the places it needs to be. And I'm also working on Mr. Rainey's situation. He's called me to see if we can expand our daycare system. But we all need to work together. We also need to not only educate the community, but we also have to educate our business community. You know, and I'll work together with the chamber and with the SCIA to make sure that people who maybe don't have a spotless record, they're looked at upon about who they are and what they can do, not necessarily about what they did 10 years ago. You know, you can have a credit report, and after 3 or 5 years, it's off your credit report. You hear people saying, I'm working on my credit. They get a good credit, they're proud of that, and they're gonna keep that good credit. But then a criminal record, somebody can be arrested 20 years ago, and a person might not hire them because they were arrested 20 years ago. We gotta change that education piece too, to make sure that people know that, you know, there is hope out there. And, you know, a person's situation doesn't necessarily define who they're going to be because of their situation. You know, I'm a son of an alcoholic, and a friend once told me a story about these two kids that were childs of an alcoholic father. One of them became an alcoholic when he grew up, one didn't. And they asked the one that was an alcoholic, why do you drink? And he says, well, because my father drank. And then he asked the one who didn't drink, why don't you drink? He said, well, because my father drank. So, you know, we just need to show people the right path. And I want you to know our local government's committed. We're here today, you know, us 3 council members are here today because we don't want you to have to come to our meeting. We want to come out and learn what the needs are of the community so that way we can make the right choices and decisions. I do invite you to come to our meeting because we have 6 other council people that aren't here that need to hear this. But I want you to know that we're here because we care. And anything you need, you know, my cell phone is out there on my website. If you want it, it's 985-688-6632. But just Google Darren Guidry and it's there. I give it out to everyone. I don't even know my business number because I never give it out. So, thank you, Councilman. Councilman Guidry.
Hello, my name is Daryl Guidry. I'm a parish councilman. I represent the Chauvin, part of East Houma area. You know, everybody that came up here had a little bit of a different part, but it all comes together, especially with the sheriff's office, with Mr. Harris. Well, Mr. Harris, you know, when you came up to start speaking, I didn't know that me and you lived in the same house when we grew up, because our parents acted the same exact way as us, with discipline in your house, you know. The first thing we need to do is get God back in our lives. When we went to school, a lot of these older people, when we went to school, the first thing we did, we stood up, we said the Pledge of Allegiance, and we said the prayer. A few people came in and they said, they're gonna take this away from us. So they started taking, and this, you know, this happened years ago, 40, 50 years ago, where they started taking a little bit away from us every day, you know, and then we start, you know, and it all boils down to your family life, you know. Mama used to know where we were. At night when we went to bed, when we were 6 years old, Mama made us kneel down by the side of that bed and say our prayers before we went to bed. She made sure that we were clean. She made sure that we were fed. The problem is today, when you go to homes that have these, a lot of these, and it's not all of them, but when you have these problem kids, there's no father in the home. There's no man to show these young juveniles right from wrong, for you to be able to say, look, I am proud of my daddy. Look who my daddy is. We don't have that anymore. And it's time we start bringing it back. You know, it's all part of all our problems. We gave our kids too much. You know, our kids wanted something. They wanted them Reeboks. I don't know what the fancy name for all these shoes are today. But in my days, they wanted Jabot jeans. They wanted Reeboks. Mama gave it to them. But when I grew up, when you wanted that Reeboks or them jeans, you went out and you worked for it. The problem is a lot of our kids today, look, go anywhere you want in Terrebonne Parish, there's help wanted signs. Go out and get a job. Make it where you are, where you feel like you're making yourself into this community. You're a great person, and it does things to you, you know. A lot of these homes, you know, now, we live on the government, we live on the system. No, we wasn't born to live on this system. We were born for this system when you were down to help you get back up and get back into the real world every day and fight. You got to fight every day of your life because there's somebody in this world that wants to lead you down the wrong path. You know, and it starts at the home. The whole problem with with crime, violent crime, I mean, it's sad to see all these people shooting each other. But our problems start at home, guys. When you don't have a home for these kids, like Miss McNabb, you know, she raises these kids, she sees these kids. Mr. Harris, he sees them when they get a little bit older, but we all need to come together and take care of our children. You know, like on the Hillary Clinton campaign, it takes a village. It does take a village to raise all our kids. You know, when we were younger,
And Aunt Susie down the road or Miss Susan down the road said, she calls up and she says, Mom, I seen Lil Durk doing this, you know what I mean? Well, guess what? Lil Durk did that, you know what I mean? No matter what. My mama did not say, well, no, he didn't do it, because an adult will be responsible people back then. And they didn't take up for everything our kids do. Mr. Harris, Mr. Harding that's in the school board, y'all know that. When a kid messes up in school, mamas are always coming down and they want to take up for their kids. You know, but you can't just keep taking, it's not the schools, it's not the teacher didn't love me, the teacher didn't like me. There's a reason that you're not getting along with this teacher. And these kids are going into these classes and you're hurting all our kids. They're being disruptive, you know, and they're not letting my kid or Sergeant or the sheriff's kid learn something. They're holding all of our kids back. So, you know, I could go on, it means a lot to me because these kids are our future of Terrebonne Parish, you know. These kids are the next leaders of Terrebonne Parish. But we need to wake up and we need to tell all of our daughters and sons, raise your kids right. Be there for them. Be there when it's time, when they get off that school bus. Give them a snack and say, look, before you go outside and play, you go outside and do it. You got homework you got to get done. And look, when the street lights come on, make sure you in my house. Because we're going to sit down and we're going to sit down as a family and eat all together. And we're going to discuss the problems. You know, we got people that go out, they celebrate, man. Little Susie just graduated. We're going to go out and we're going to celebrate. So you go, they all go to Applebee's, they go somewhere, and there's 10 of them celebrating. You know how they celebrate? Every 8 of them like this playing on their phone. They're not celebrating. No, they're just going out in public. But we need to get the families back together. And you know, this won't happen overnight where the sheriff can fix these problems or Mr. Harris can fix these problems. It's going to take 15 to 20 years of us keeping going, making sure our kids are fed, making sure we know where our kids are. This is something that we need to get done, and I could go on forever about this because it's really something that really gets to my heart. I'm for the normal people, guys. You know, we all need to come together. You know, and that was Roger King saying, why can't just we all get along? Mr. Harding, thank you a lot for what y'all do, you know what I mean? Sheriff, thank you. Mr. Harris, thank you. Thank y'all for everybody that's in here because y'all are in charge of the future of Terrebonne Parish. And God, let's not let our kids go see Mr. Harris. Let's not get them to go see Tim Saunier. Let's do what we can do and stand by your kids every day and teach them the right way of life. It's us all in this room. It's these moms and daddies. We need to get this done. We need to. Thank you.
This is where I started, and I guess basically this is where we're going to end. 2 more people I want to introduce to you. Mr. Steve Pineville, stand up. When I got this position, before I got this position, and I asked this man, I said, well, I'm not much of a politician. I got a love for the people. I don't deal with the politics of Norm. He has assisted me throughout the 2 years and something that I had. And I told him, I said, look, man, I'm straightforward. I won't lie to you, and you won't lie. If you don't lie to me, we're going to go down the road. I called this man to help me to get some of the people out, and every time I call for this man, I think he's more powerful than Cardi Dove. Because he answers the call and gets the job done for me. You know what I mean? He's been a great friend, and oftentimes you don't see him. And he's around all the time, but he takes care of Darren's problems. He takes care of Dirk's problems. He takes care of a lot of people's problems here. And I would refuse to be left here because a lot of times he pushed me up front when I didn't feel as if that I could be there. Sometime my time, my gas, and my pocket don't equal my passion I have for my people. And I thank God for people like him to help me along the way. Because it's truly the responsibility of every citizen good or bad, to have better. We have to collectively work together. Appreciate everyone that has participated in this program, and as always, the final word will be from the angel of this house, Pastor Reverend Dr. Irvin Brown.
All of the people will say amen. Truly, this has been an eye-opening experience for all of us. And I thank you in behalf of the Eagle Wright Baptist Church and also Reverend Dr. Lewis Clark for coming here on today to give us such pertinent information as you have given us. This experience that we have had today will remain a part of us for the rest of our lives. And we will not take it lightly, but we are going to try to put what you shared with us into being and also incorporate it in our lives and in the lives of our children. We are aware of the fact that we are not in this world alone. And I kept hearing that today, that all of us need each other. And I believe Mr. Harris put it the best way of all. If you see something, say something. And I think we have neglected that throughout our days as black people. We zip up our lips when we see something. We need to stop that. And we need to start chattering about it just as we would a basketball game or something else. When we see something, we need to say something to law enforcement. Otherwise, we are being permissive, or we are doing what criminals want us to do by keeping our lips sealed. I advise every person present in here today, if you see something, say something. Tell the story about what you see, and you'll make this world a better world for all of us to live in today. As I conclude my remarks, there's food prepared for you in our dining area. We pray that you partake with us after the benedictory prayer. Would you stand now for the benediction? Would you bow your heads? God our Father, we are grateful for all that we have learned on today. We thank you for each person who played a role in it. We thank you for each sheriff and for each person on program today. And we ask, God, that you continue to open our eyes of awareness about the crime and other things which are going on in our communities. And God, let us be able to do something about it. We ask that you bless each individual who spoke to us today, and that what they said to us will be put in our minds and our hearts and acted upon in our lives. Now, God, we ask that you bless the food which has been prepared for the nourishment of our bodies. Bless those who prepared it, we pray. And then keep all of us in your care and watchfulness. Watch over and protect us as you have done during the past 2 years from the coronavirus pandemic. Now keep us as we go to our separate places of residence. It is in the name of Jesus Christ our Lord that we offer this prayer. And for your glory we pray. Amen.